Hi there, folks. Welcome along to this session. So, if you're wondering what this session is about, this is number 5 in a series called Get You and Your Business Ready to Work with Corporates. And it's really about getting you prepared to work with corporate organisations, making sure you know everything you need to know to get started and getting you all prepared. So, here's what we're going to cover in this session. We're going to talk about what corporates want. That's really important to understand. And there are two parts to what I think you need to know about that. And the first part of knowing what they want is understanding a little bit about how they operate. So we're going to cover today how corporates operate, and then we're going to look at how you can figure out what they want from that. So really important to understand that context before you worry too much about what you're going to sell to them. You have to know what people need before you try to start to service what you want to give to them. So I'm just going to have a quick drink of water. I've got a bit of an ongoing throat problem here, so there'll be lots of pauses for water today, but that'll give you time to take notes and to think. So I'm going to check my notes a little bit about today as we go along, because I want to hit some key points with you today. So before you can understand what a particular corporate wants from you, and then you can figure out how to tailor what you might want to offer them, it's really important that you know how corporates operate. Now, while there'll be some nuance from one corporate to another and between different types of organisations, there are some basic principles that pretty much work across the board that will cover everything. So, here's something to just let you know. There be some basic principles that will apply everywhere. Every corporate organisation will be working on an annual budget, and it's really important that you know how money works inside corporate organisations, because that's what you want to exchange in return for your services or products. Now, whether they've got a longer term budget in total, so they might be working on 3, 5, 10 year budgets, they will still be working to an annual budget. And their annual budget will either run January to December, or it will run April to April. And lots of corporates in the UK, for example, run April to April. Lots in Canada and the US run January to December. But you can always find out exactly how they do run. Now, within that annual budget, even if they have a bigger budget overall, they will draw down their annual budget, and that's what people will spend and operate within. It's really useful if you understand that there are generally two parts to that budget. One is what's called their OPEX budget, so you sometimes hear them talk about OPEX, and that's short for operational expenditure. The other part of their budget is called CAPEX, and that's short for capital expenditure. Now, what are these two things, and why does it matter to you? Well, it can be useful to know whether they are buying from you within their CAPEX budget or their OPEX. Now, let me tell you a little bit more about what those mean. So, within the year, a corporate will have their annual budget, and that will be at a high level, a central level, and then each different department or function will have their amounts within that. So they'll be given certain amounts within those budgets, and they'll have to live within their means for that year. Now, the two elements, OPEX and CAPEX, work like this. Operating expenditure is for anything that you need to spend in your budget, so whether it's your directorate, your function, or your team, because the budget will basically start up here and just trickle down in smaller amounts to the person who's spending it. Now, everything that you need to basically do your business as usual operation, so whether it's staff overheads, whether it's materials you need to purchase, whatever your operating costs are, that has to be paid from your OPEX. Now, there are different tax rules for these two types of budget, so your OPEX has to be very strictly for what does it cost you to keep your unit turning over. Now, your CAPEX is different, and capital expenditure is what you're going to use for any big purchases that you're going to make. So if you're going to buy significant new equipment, so not repair or renew anything you've got, but significant new equipment, because it's got different tax rules, and you can always ask an accountant for the details of this. Also, CAPEX is for any project spend. And what is a project? A project is anything that's not business as usual that makes a temporary or permanent change to the operating business. That's what a project is for. And projects are generally funded from capital expenditure. So it can be really useful for you to know, is the stuff that you do part of keeping the business going? So is it part of them just delivering a good service, taking care of their people, running the business the way that it needs to run? or is it part of something new or additional or a change that's been driven into the business, because that will make it part of the CapEx budget. Now, CapEx budgets, OpEx budgets run year to year, pretty much annualised. CapEx budgets can change, so they can sometimes run over multiple years, because some projects take more than 1 year, and they'll generally be awarded long term. So it's useful for you to know what territory you're in, so that you can understand a bit about how they are spending their money, and it might give you an idea of the longevity of contract you can be in. We just have a quick drink of water here. So within that annual budget, most people will know what they're spending in their OpEx budget and what they're spending in their CapEx budget. Now, every year people will generally look to have more in their budget, but they'll generally be expected to do more with less budget, and that's the kind of pressure they're under. So there's always that constant tension. So that means they're always looking at new suppliers, better ways to do things, and that's really where you come in. It's really important that when you're speaking to clients, you're thinking about how you can get into their budget plans. So a lot of business development that we're doing just now is getting into people's budget development plans for next year. So clients that I'm working with in Canada, I'm looking to be in their budget starting in January. Clients that we're working with in the UK, we're looking to be in their budget starting next April. So we're speaking to them about what they might have next year going on that we can help with, so that we can match up what that offer is, start to give them an indication of pricing so that they can think about putting that in their budget. Now, some clients you work with will have money in their budget every year for the type of work or product that you offer. So you still want to have you top of mind, but you don't necessarily have to push them to make sure it's in their budget. If you know, actually this is part of OpEx, every year they spend 20,000 or 200,000 or 200 million on this service. If you know it's something they invest in all the time, there's a bit less pressure for you to make sure they're putting that in there. But you still want to make sure that when they are spending that budget, they're thinking directly of you. So on those annualised budgets, people will generally spend up to their budget as close as they can. There's always pressure in big corporates to hit your budget on a monthly basis and on a yearly basis, because in the same way that the budgets trickle down, the reporting feeds back up. So the organisation are always looking to know how close to budget are we, who's underspending, who's overspending, and actually there's rarely any reward for underspending in a lot of corporates. As crazy as that seems, a lot of big organisations don't actually reward people for underspending, because they see it as not having good forecasting and budgeting. So it's not always the reward you think it is. So sometimes getting towards the end of their annual year or their annual budget, there can actually be pressure on them to spend whatever's left, and that's another good thing for you to know whether any of your clients are in that place, and if they are, is there anything you can quickly let them spend with you, because you can help them out of a hole. So that's part of how they operate in terms of operating and OpEx expenditure and CapEx expenditure. Another important thing to know is where the buying rights are. So some people that you will speak to individually, they will have the authority to say what they want to happen for their team or for their directorate, but they won't actually have any buying authority. They won't have any purchasing authority. That purchasing authority might sit in another part of their organisation. So they might be the person who says to you, yeah, I want your thing, put me in a proposal, but quite often they will not be the person who's able to authorise that spend. They'll have to go to another team who authorise that, or they'll have to go through some layers of governance to get that approved. So it's always useful to just make sure that you find out, if you want to buy from me, what is it you need to do in your end in your corporate to make that happen, because it can take maybe a little bit longer than you perhaps expect. It's not like a consumer or a small business who can just say, yeah, I want that, I'm buying, make the decision, buy. There's always a little bit more paperwork involved, and you just want to know how some of that works. It may be that they have a buying team that they have to go to, maybe that they have a manager that has to approve it, but beyond that very small amounts, you won't have people in corporates able to just make huge purchases. It tends to be a bit lower amounts. So make sure that you know how they buy. So as well as those central functions and directorates that have got different levels of buying power and different levels of budget and different levels of authority, they also have different needs. And this is something that comes up all the time when people ask me what they're going to sell to corporates. You know, you will have some things that are really, really obvious that you're going to sell to corporates, but also the way to really make sure that you sell the right thing to them is go and figure out what do they need. So if you know what corporate or what corporates you want to work with, it can be a really good exercise to just figure out, well, what do they need? Because let me tell you what they want. What they want are specific solutions to their problems. So what they want is not to have to try and figure out what you offer, how does it fix it, how does it improve their business. What they want to be able to do is listen to you, look at what you're offering, and know exactly how that solves their problem. And the way you do that is because you articulate it in that way. So if you do a little bit of research and a little bit of work to figure out what is it they actually need, so what do they buy on a regular basis, what problems are they experiencing, what problems are they either in their business, with their customer service, or with their employees. If you can figure out that and then just make your messaging fit exactly how you solve that problem, you're actually doing half of the thinking and half of the effort for them. Because corporates have a big choice of suppliers. They really want to buy from small businesses more than you can believe they want to buy from small businesses, especially at the moment where they're under huge budget pressures and huge financial pressures. They're not going to run out of money in the recession, but they are going to come under additional budget pressure to reduce their costs. And working with you is a really, really good way they can do that. And they know that. They know that working with small businesses, they can get the same levels of service and delivery with lower overheads associated. So they'll be looking to work with you in a more increased way at the moment, but you've got to make it easy for them. They do not want to root around your business or your proposals trying to figure out what is it that they've got that I might need. They want right away to know, and they want that in clear, crisp, business-like language. It does not need as much soft language or as much detail in order to say, this is how I connect with you on a personal level. They're really looking for the business language and the business solution as clear and as concise as can possibly be. Because when you work in corporate, you're busy. People who are buying, who are out seeking things from the market, who are assessing tenders and bids and reading proposals, they are reading a lot of words and a lot of proposals in a week. So the quicker and easier you can make it for them, the more likely you are to be lifted out of that pile and put forward to be bought from. Hello Sarah, I see Sarah. I see you've left me a message, Sarah. I listened to it this morning. I'm back at work today and catching up with everything, so I will listen to your message and get back to you right after this actually. So the other things they need to know about you, specific ways that you answer their problem, are how does it fix their issue? How does it improve their business? What does it cost? And remember, if you've not listened to any of my sessions on talking about pricing, please do go and listen to this, because when someone in corporate asks you what it costs, your answer must always, always, always start with a number, not a story, not an explanation, because all those things devalue your price. You must start with a number, because that gives them confidence that you are confident in your pricing. And if you need to practice that 1,000 times in the mirror until you feel it, please do it, because you really need to feel confident in your pricing. So you need to get that number straight out of your mouth when someone asks what it costs. So they want to know what it costs, and they want to know how you'll deliver it, and how and how that will help them. That's what you really want to focus on. So what are you going to do to figure that out? The first thing I'm going to suggest is that when you know what corporate you want to work with, just do a little bit of homework. Like, you don't have to do intense research. We do that for big bids. But if you want to start approaching a corporate, do a little bit of your homework. And I'll give you an example of why. So I worked in a large corporate organisation. We weren't a profit-making corporate organisation, but we spent a lot of money. We were spending billions every year. And we had someone come in to speak to us, and it was a big pitch actually, so competitive tender where lots of people are having to bid against each other to win the work. So a very high volume of money, and we had 3 organisations come in and pitch to us. 2 absolutely superb. 1 superb except for the fact that they fundamentally misunderstood the fact that we did not generate a profit. So they directed a lot of what they told us about how they would help us be more profitable. Now, we were a government funded organisation. We did actually have to generate revenue. That was part of our role, was to generate revenue, but not profit, because everything we generated in revenue went back into the business. And not understanding that distribution of profits and that need to make profits in the same way told us that they fundamentally misunderstood our business. It also told us they didn't bother doing that much research. So we realised right away, and they talked to us the whole time about working on an annualised budget. Now, actually, at that time, we did have an annualised budget, but we were a capital expenditure project that was funded for 5 years. So the fact that they just made those basic elements of error just told us they haven't really done enough research, and they were actually a phenomenally impressive organisation, but they just got enough things wrong that just completely blew that out the water. So that's why you want to do a little bit of research just to get yourself in the space of, if you're going to work with someone, how are they funded? Like, are they a limited company that's on the stock market, so they've got shareholders and they need to make profits and pay dividends? Maybe they're a start-up company on the stock exchange, so yeah, they've got to make a profit, but they're not yet paying out dividends because they're in growth phase for their business. Maybe they're a huge corporate generating enormous dividends. Maybe they're a government organisation. That could be an academic organisation. It could be one of the government departments. Could be local government. In which case, what they're doing is a public service, so they're not distributing profits. So they're definitely always under pressure to keep their costs as low as they can and deliver as much for the public purse. Really important just to know what those financial contexts that they're operating in. You don't necessarily have to tailor your whole pitch around it, but if it comes up in any pitches or discussion, it's useful for you to know that show that you've educated yourself. Because one thing that corporates do want is they want to do business with people who understand a little bit about their world. They don't want you telling them all the time that you don't know anything about it. You don't have to be completely vested in their jargon and all their terminology. They want you to be an expert in your field, but they do want you to know a little bit about their world, because they just need to have a little bit of confidence that you've done your homework, basically. So, just to recap, these are the things that you want to know. How are their budgets operating? What do they need? How are they funded? And how does what you offer fix what they need? How can you demonstrate that what you offer fixes what they need? And there are only a certain number of problems that big corporates have, and there are only a certain number of solutions to those. So don't make that too wide and too niche. Think about the basic problem that they are having and how your solution fixes that. And then make sure that when you articulate that to them, that that's really clear and concise. It's got a price attached to it that's simple, and you tell them how you're going to deliver it. And that is as simple as it is. So that's all for this session. I hope you found that useful. Join me tomorrow when you're going to be able to hear the last in this series of 6, and have a great rest of your day.